Hi, and welcome to Changemakers with Eleanor, the podcast where we dive into the lives and lessons of those who are making a difference. I'm your host, Eleanor Baggaley, and in each episode we bring you inspiring stories from leaders, coaches, and people who are not just dreaming of change, but making it happen. Whether they're penning their first book, working in their community, or leading a revolution in their industry, you'll get a first-hand look at how they're shaping the world. If you're looking to leave a mark or simply love a good story about modern-day heroes, you've come to the right place. Here, we're all about changing the world, whether that's one person's world or the world in general. So grab your notebook or just a comfortable seat and let's explore these fascinating journeys together. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to ensure you never miss an episode. Let's go change the world together. So in this week's episode, I have Sam Gibson with me. So Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and what makes you a change maker.
Thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast, Eleanor. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited for today's conversation. To answer your question, we were chatting a little bit before we came on, and I consider myself a thought leader or a change maker because I am an author and a speaker as well as a coach who helps people exclusively with their eating habits. Now, I'm not just helping them with losing weight and diet per se. It's actually helping them uncover the real reasons why they struggle with emotional eating, disordered eating, and getting people out of decade-long cycles of binge and restrict eating, which many people in the diet industry have actually fell victim to. So I believe I am a change maker because I'm going against the grain and offering advice and having conversations around eating habits and the deeper psychology around what creates eating habits that most people aren't willing to talk about. And the whole concept of my book is actually about how the reason you overeat, it's got nothing to do with food at all. And it's got everything to do with the chaos and the uncertainty and the stresses that you've got going on in your life. And the fact that eating habits are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to people's problems. And most food issues are actually personal issues manifesting as a physical eating habit. So I guess talking about those conversations and knocking on those doors and kind of throwing that out there to people who may be thinking that dieting or eating habits are all about willpower and discipline, and telling them actually it's not about that at all. It's about what's going on in here. That's what I consider myself, why I'm a thought leader or a change maker.
Super. And yeah, I think when we were chatting before, I think it definitely made me think this last week I've been craving chocolate, and I know it's not because I need that chocolate. I know it's absolutely because there's other stuff going on. And for me, does it make it stop? Do I stop having it? No, but I guess it's not always about kind of stopping those things. It's about understanding and still making those choices once you are aware of it, I guess, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing I say to my clients, it's not about this whole, I shouldn't eat chocolate because chocolate's bad. That's actually diet culture that's coming in this all or nothing mindset, right? And I say to my clients all the time, if you want to eat chocolate because you're feeling a bit overwhelmed or, you just want a bit of comfort, well, so what? It's whether you make that mean, now I'm guilty and ashamed for eating chocolate and I'm going to have 10 more bars. That's the problem. So it's not the food that's the issue. It's the whole point of my book here, shameless plug. Why You Overeat and How to Stop. The whole point of it is not to demonize food as the bad thing. It's just understanding, well, what's causing me to eat that? So if you have that awareness to be like, sometimes I might feel a bit stressed or a bit overwhelmed and I'm looking for comfort. Well, that's a human thing to do, to seek comfort. It's about whether does that become detrimental to your physical or emotional health. That's the problem. So it's not the chocolate bar, that's the issue. It's does eating the chocolate bar cause you to eat 10 more? That's the problem. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have that awareness to go, of course I look for food when I'm feeling discomfort. I think that's normal. Babies do that. Babies cry, mum feeds it. Yeah. It's a natural human thing.
And I guess it's very easy for us to attach emotions to what we've eaten based on kind of the way we've been brought up, the way society views different things, the whole diet culture that is, I guess, rife at the moment about good and bad and kind of sins and things like that. I think that's probably, or has that impacted the way that we view food and the emotions that we attach to the way we eat?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you only have to look at, mainstream culture, even in the past, since like post World War II, since maybe the 50s, the 60s, the rise of Hollywood and the cinema and celebrity culture and things like that, body standards, and you should look like this and you should behave like that, especially for women. I mean, I'm not a woman, in case you couldn't tell, but I work with thousands of women, and I hear this all the time. Sam, I've always put my weight on a pedestal. My mum or my grandmother always commented on my body, or everyone around me in teenage years was always obsessed with the latest diet or the latest celebrity. Or, I remember when I was a kid, it was Kate Moss, she was like in the early 2000s, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Like, we've been bombarded with this culture, especially women, to say you should look like this. And if you don't look like that, you're less than. And that's a problem. And, we can get into that and what, the deeper meanings of that. But the reality is multiple generations of women now have been fed this information from a young age. And if they're not aware of that, going, actually, I don't think that should be true, or that's detrimental, or I'm not going to align with that, I'm going to choose my own path. If you're just unconsciously following these narratives, then you will fall victim to diet culture or obsessing about your body, which will then impact your relationship with food, because now we've pedestalized food. This food's good, that food's bad. If I look like this, I'm not good enough. I look like that, I'm good enough. We're basically delegating our self-worth to external standards, and that's the dangerous part of diet culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you talked about the difference between male and female. Do you think that they're an increasing feeling around kind of the way that men are viewed in the same way, or do you think there is still that discrepancy between the impact on men versus women?
I think traditionally it was more focused towards women, but I had my own eating disorder myself. I talk about that in the book. That's what inspired me to actually coach others on this too. So I grew up with, well, I turned 15 or 16 in the rise of social media. So 2010, 2011, when the smartphones came out, the Instagram and the Facebook and the this, and that. So I was like coming of age out of being a child into an adult round about this time. And I saw the male bodybuilders, the male fitness models and the this and that. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got to look like that. So it's easier now for men to fall into that trap as well, because there's more, there's more of those standards pushed on men as well. I wouldn't say it's traditionally a female issue. I think it's more likely to come across as a female issue because men are more kind of programmed based on their performance, whether it's with work, whether it's for how good they are for other people, whether it's with their achievements. And I think more of the narrative have pushed towards women about that physical look and appearance. So, we could talk all day about, is it a male issue, is it a female issue? It does majority impact females, in my opinion, because I think more of the narrative is pushed towards you're not a man unless you're successful enough. So I think a lot of men are comparing themselves to other men, are standards of wealth and material possessions and maybe other looks rather than their weight or their body. Whereas I think women are more pushed towards that. I am generalizing here, of course, but it's still a male issue because I've struggled with eating habits myself as well. And that come from comparison due to other people on social media. So I think since the rise of social media, it's just exacerbated everything. Yeah, I think everyone, male or female or anything in between, is a victim of these narratives if you're not aware that they exist. Because you've still got to choose to go along with them. You can be pushed a narrative that's saying you're not good enough unless you look like this. And I get it, that's not good, especially for young, impressionable minds. But at the end of the day, you're still a self-autonomous human who chooses to believe those narratives. So this is the realm of self-autonomy here. I struggled with that comparison because I aligned to it and I was allowing myself to get wrapped up in it. But when I realized that I had a choice and I can disconnect from that and form my own path, it didn't affect me anymore. So we can't blame it all on culture, but we can say culture is a massive factor.
It's been, well, as you've said, it's that kind of quadrant, isn't it, where you go through that unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, where you are aware of it, then conscious competence and into the unconscious competence. So I guess you've kind of gone through that full journey and are now kind of doing this. It is just normal and ingrained to you as to how you approach things. In going on that journey, obviously you had your eating disorder. How did you start to deal with that? When did you realize that it was something that you needed to address, and how did you go about that?
It's a great question. I talk about this in chapter 1 of my books. From 2015 to 2018, I was obsessed with my body. Was a former personal trainer. I started off as a personal trainer. I used to do fitness, what they call fitness photo shoots and bodybuilding competitions as well. So my entire identity, Eleanor, was kind of delegated on I'm only good enough unless I have a six-pack, unless I look like this, unless I look like that. So my entire life, I was obsessed with that. My entire personality was that. And that's what led to like disordered eating, where I'd binge and restrict and go on crazy diets, where I'd get in ridiculous shape. Then I'd gain 30, 40 pounds back in a week because I'd spend a week binging in the house, feeling deprived from all the foods I cut myself out of. So I had this extreme relationship with food. And I remember the day, because it was such a significant day. It was the turning point in my life. 23rd of March 2018. I was suffering with panic attacks at the time. And at the time, I didn't know why, but I can maybe open up a little bit later on and explain why. But what I realized is I would use food to soothe feelings of anxiety. And if I went downstairs because I couldn't sleep and I felt I was going to have a panic attack and I binged on loads of food in the middle of the night when everyone else was in bed, I would calm down and go to sleep. So I had one of the worst panic attacks ever, where I woke up in the night like 3, 4 o'clock and I felt anxious and I was like, why can't I sleep? Why can't I sleep? Started ruminating on all my problems. All of a sudden I'm having heart palpitations. I'm opening the Velux window in my bedroom. I used to be, when I lived at home, I was on the 3rd floor. So I had this like window you'd open up. I'm sticking my head outside of it, like, and I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was trapped. I felt claustrophobic. So I literally put my coat on, left the house at 4 a.m. in the morning. And for about 10 minutes, I'm not trying to be morbid or dramatic here, I was like, I can't live like this, because this was a repeated thing. And I don't know what I was going to do, but I didn't plan on coming back. I'll just leave it at that. And on that walk, the penny dropped and I realized, like, I don't want to die. I'm just so afraid of living like this. I need to get to the bottom of why I'm having these panic attacks, because it's massively impacting my mental health, and I'm binging, and there was loads of other things going on in my life, which I will talk about later on, because it'll link perfectly back into how I help people now. But I just didn't know what to do with the anxiety. So I realized, like, pursuing these body standards, these extreme goals, or putting all of my eggs in one basket, thinking I'll find happiness through my physical appearance, it's causing me so much anxiety. So anyways, I didn't do whatever I was planning on doing. I came home that day and, had a day feeling sorry for myself. Then I went on social media, or went on YouTube and typed in, like, how to get over anxiety. And a video by Jordan Peterson come up. I don't know if you've heard of him before. And he was talking about how anxiety is actually creative energy with nowhere to go. And that hit me like an absolute ton of bricks, right? At the time, I had an idea for a business. I wanted to be a personal trainer, but I was too afraid to post. I was so afraid of rejection. Yeah, I had goals and dreams about building these things in my life and, improve my life and doing this, doing that, doing courses, doing all the things I want to do. And I was doing nothing. I left university in 2017 and I sat on my arse for a year, blaming the world for how it made me feel. And I realized I've got all this creative energy that I'm not doing anything with, and it's staying trapped in my body. It's physical anxiety. And the only way I knew how to come out was physical panic attacks. And I didn't know it at the time. So I realized my issues with food is being exacerbated by my obsession with my appearance, and thinking that my appearance will make me happy, even though I got in better shape than 99% of the planet and still wasn't happy. But the underlying issue wasn't that I had a food problem, is that was food become my coping mechanism for when I felt anxious. So I needed to get to the root of what my anxiety was. And I found on that day it was because I was avoiding all the things I was scared of, all the things that I wanted to do, but I hadn't took action on yet. All of the creative desires and dreams that I had that I was too afraid to get started. The business idea that I wanted to do to help people, I was so afraid of rejection. In my experience as a personal trainer when I first started, Eleanor, the night before I had my first ever client, I had a panic attack and I made some bullshit excuse up about how I couldn't make it. And I lost the client and they went to someone else in the gym. And that reinforced this narrative in my mind for like 6 months of, see, I knew I wouldn't be good enough. Yeah. That was my first experience. So all of my life I'd avoided
prophecy, if you like.
Yes. Yeah. So I realized it's anxiety that I've got an issue with. I needed to understand what was causing it. And when I basically turned the pyramid on its head and said, instead of avoiding my fears, I'm going to face them head on, anxiety went away like that. And within 6 months, I'd kind of achieved a lot of the things I'd been putting off for years. So that was when the penny dropped for me. I didn't have a food problem. I had an anxiety problem, which was caused by avoidance, which that's what anxiety is. It's avoiding things. And I just needed to flip it on its head and face my fears. And then the anxiety would go because I'd be using that creative energy for something. So it was just a fear of getting started, a fear of rejection, a fear of worst case scenario that put me in a state of avoidance that manifested as panic attacks. Then my coping mechanism, good old trusty food, which for many people, it'll be exactly the same.
Absolutely. You've talked there about starting as a personal trainer. So how did you go on that journey, or how did things change or develop to go from being a personal trainer to looking at what the psychology is behind eating, overeating, binging, dieting, all of the food-related behaviours that you see?
So I'll be 100% honest with you, right? How it worked out, I never planned this at all. It was completely random.
The best things happen when they're not planned, to be honest, anyway.
Spontaneous, yeah. So I kind of started my own journey of personal development in 2018. and I worked on a lot of stuff, past traumas. I got some psychotherapy. I understood mindset. I went deep. I must have read hundreds, if not thousands of books. Seriously, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to that sort of stuff. And I went deep on my own personal journey. At the same time, while I started personal training people in the gym. About 2 years later, I realized all of the same problems that my personal training clients are having, they're telling me about how much they struggle with stress and anxiety and their eating habits. And when they go home, they'll sometimes binge even after they've had a great personal training session. So I was like, my PT clients who I'm thinking I can help lose weight and get in shape by an hour gym session 3 times a week, it's not really going to have any impact on the results whatsoever. But also they're mirroring the exact same things that I used to struggle with. And I was like, right. So I had an idea late 2019 where I was like, I think I could actually gravitate towards coaching people on their mindset. But again, similar themes to the couple of years before, I put it off because I was comfortable. I was making maybe about £3,000 a month personal training, which, for someone who was doing nothing the year before, that was a nice little job. I was like 25 at the time, like fresh out of university. That's a good job. You know what I mean? Like I was doing well for myself.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I was like, I'm comfortable. Why would I? And then something happened in 2020. Yeah, beginning with a C. Remember that? Yeah. Let's not
Indeed.
go there. Don't get me to put my
Yeah.
tinfoil hat on. Right? Anyways, I was forced into it. All of a sudden, this business I built for 18 months, nothing. I had £2,000 worth of bills a month that I couldn't pay. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I was forced into it yet again. Same thing as before. Anxiety's here. I spent a week hiding behind the sofa crying, blaming Boris Johnson. And then I was like, right, you've got to do something. And I was like, if not now, when? And I basically put some posts out there. I'm doing an online program for people who struggle with emotional eating. And then I've never stopped. So I was forced into this change. I guess I wanted to do it, but I think if that never happened, I probably would have still been too afraid and I would have just been personal training. And I would have never wrote this book. So it started off as just helping people in the gym. And then I realized those same people who I'm helping in the gym were struggling with the same issues I was. And then the lockdowns and COVID and all that sort of stuff forced me into it. And then it's just gravitated.
Yeah, in all honesty, I don't think you're alone. And I know I'm kind of one as well, that there's sometimes we are looking for or we're not necessarily looking for those external forces to kind of force our hand. But it's interesting to reflect back on it, that actually it's something that you wanted to do anyway, but actually it was that external force that's made you kind of pivot or relook at what it is that you're doing. And actually you have no idea what those opportunities are. And I think, well, I'd imagine that you are immensely grateful for what's happened with that kind of pivot. COVID might not have been great, but at least something good's come out of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I know obviously you're a well-renowned author. Have you heard of Joseph Campbell?
Yes, I think I have.
He conceptualized the hero's journey back in the 50s, which
Yes.
is the Carl Jung whole archetypical thing of the hero's journey. And there's the kind of the call to adventure. That's the starting point. And I've heard Carl Jung talk about the Swiss psychologist from the 20th century. He'll say you'll either make the change voluntarily by facing fear and doing what you're afraid of because you think it's right, or the universe will just present circumstances in your way where you've got no choice. And I've actually got a keynote that I delivered for my clients at a talk in South Shields once. It's one of my favorite things to teach. It's the hero's journey. And
Yeah.
for me, that was the hero's journey point. It was like I voluntarily made the call in 2018 to face my fears, and amazing things happened. But then in 2020, I avoided it, and then lockdown forced me to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's listening to this podcast right now, but I can guarantee you there's someone listening to this who's got a dream, got a goal, got an idea, and they've been putting it off. It'll happen eventually, but it comes from either you doing it voluntarily, which is hard, or the universe will force you to do it. And for many people, this is unfortunately the midlife breakdown that they have, whether it's a job loss, a crisis, a personal loss, a family death, a marriage breakdown, a mental health crisis. That's unfortunately, you refused the call to adventure voluntarily, and then the universe went, I'm going to have to put some horrible circumstances in front of you, so you take action. And that's what these crises are. So the spiritual path is just to embrace it. And if something comes into your head that you're like, "Ooh, I'm afraid," but I think that's what I want, then you've got to do it.
So interesting. I mean, one of the guests that's been on recently, she talks up, I think her stuff is about going with the flow, and it is that kind of just, you are where you're supposed to be. And I guess that it's like, if you embrace it, you go along with that. And if you don't, you are being forced to go to where you should be,
Yeah.
where you want to be.
Yeah.
I've talked about it in the past about, and this came to me, I was going to a training session and I paused. I knew exactly which tube stop in London I needed to be getting on and where I was going to and everything like that. But I paused and I missed that tube. I got on another one. I still got to the destination I was supposed to be at in the end, but it was just a little bit delayed because I took that momentary pause. And I think that's kind of a good analogy for life and what you're talking about, that it's like when we're banging against kind of the direction that we should be going in, that's that pausing. We didn't get on that first train, but actually the universe pushes us onto that next train that's coming along and we still get there. It just looks a little bit different.
So Joseph Campbell calls that the refusal to the call, before the call to adventure, where some of our favourite movies, right, significant points of the movie. You've seen Harry Potter before? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So Hagrid comes in the hut and says, "You're a wizard, Harry." And he's like, "Well, I'm not a wizard. I'm just this little specky kid from Surrey or whatever he was. I'm not a wizard," like whatever he says. And he pauses, right? And then he goes, So there's always a moment where you pause, and whether that's like you missed the train, then you get on the next one, or whether it's a year-long pause or a decade pause, there's always a refusal to the call before, and that's just literally our feet. It's a crossroads. Am I going to give in to the fear, or am I going to embrace it? Because our potential is hidden inside the fear. So there's always the hero on the journey. We are all the own hero of our own journey. I love that saying. We are literally all the hero in our own movie. And we're just living out our own journey, and it's the way it's supposed to be. It's already been written, we just don't even know. But there's always the refusal of the call that comes before, the call to adventure. So for you, it was like you paused and you refused the call. You didn't get on the train, but then in that moment, you would have been reflecting. I don't even need to hear what you're about to say. I know exactly what would have went through your mind. I can either go home and give up, or I can just get the next train. And you had the courage to do it.
I mean, that pause for me was literally just I knew the direction I was going in, even just that kind of that moment of doubt, of self-doubt of, do I actually know it? And you need to double check it. And yeah, that for me, that was all it was. I mean, I know that's like a minor thing, but I do think that that's how it is for a lot of us. Sometimes we do have that pause because we have that moment of self-doubt in whatever it is. Mine in that instance was knowing which tube I needed to be on and which stop. But actually, I do think that happens in life as well. So in terms of kind of the work that you're doing with helping people kind of think about the food, and I guess even what we've just been talking about there is relatable in terms of what you're doing about the food thinking, because there will be probably many people who are thinking, oh, I am overeating, I'm binging, I'm just keep obsessing with chocolate or crisps or whatever it might be. But actually, I guess the same kind of principles apply to them, that they are not necessarily listening. They're aware of it, but not listening to it. So what is it that you do with people to help them to understand and make those changes?
Yeah. So I mentioned him before. I'm a big Carl Jung fan, in case you couldn't tell. And he says, first part of transformation is making the unconscious conscious, okay? So the first consult that I would do with a one-to-one client who, decides to enter my world and, works with me for I say a minimum of 3 months, but I get the best results with clients really if I work with them for about a year. I think it's deep stuff, this, especially if they've struggled for a long time. So I like to work with clients for a longer period of time to really get to understand them and they understand me and kind of build that relationship. But let's say they've read my book, they've watched a few videos, they've maybe done a course of mine. They're like, Sam, I want you to help me through this journey. Before we even talk about eating habits and diets and goals, I sit them down and I take them through a consultation. And this is the entire concept of my book. I'm kind of giving away the book here, but it's all in there. I call it the 7 void framework. Okay. So it's a list of 7 reasons, which is tried and tested based off the 2,000 people I've worked with. Yeah. Anytime someone puts their hand up and says, Sam, I'm struggling with emotional eating, or my eating habits, or overeating, or I can't lose weight, I keep yo-yo dieting, whatever that is, all the same stuff. There'll be one, if not multiple, of these possible 7 voids going on. Yet this theory is yet to be disproved. That I've worked with someone or someone's spoke to me when I struggle with eating, then actually none of those voids apply to me. So these voids are all environmental. They're basically the behind the scenes of someone's life. So the first conversation that I have with people is about, right, out of all of these voids that I'm listing, which ones do you resonate? And then when they open up about, actually, I am struggling with this, now that you mention it, I am struggling with that, the food will be a compensation for the void. So the food is being used to fill the void that they feel emotionally because of this environmental disconnect. So I can run you through these 7 reasons now if you want. Because
that'd be fab. Yeah, thank you.
So number 1, I'll start with the simplest one. It's disconnection from your daily job, which represents a purpose. So it's not just about the thing. There's always the thing in the environment, but then the deeper meaning behind it. So I like to explain it both ways. So disconnection with your job. I think all of us can resonate if we've had a time in our life where job has just been really stressful, whether we're just literally going to a job we hate to pay the bills, or we're going to a job that's really stressful and we'll come home and we're just so overwhelmed. We don't even have the emotional capacity to make a healthy lunch. Or a healthy evening meal. We'll just go to the drive-thru, we'll just go to the shop, we'll just eat rubbish. We'll just, so how many people I speak to and I'm like, right, do you think your job's impacting your eating habits? Yeah, I come home, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even think, I just eat on autopilot, or I'm so busy, I don't even have time to cook, so I'm just ordering takeaways, or or my boss is a you-know-what, or my colleagues are this or that, and I'm comfort eating at my desk because I'm like, right, okay. So that's one of the most obvious ones I'm looking at. I'm like, right, we need to create a better relationship with your job, or you need to learn how to deal with stress better. Sometimes you need to create an exit plan in the next 6 to 12 months because that is killing your soul. Carl Jung also said the most important thing you'll choose to do, or the two most important things you'll choose to do, where you choose to work and who you choose to marry. They'll impact your mental health more than anything else. So that brings me on to void number 2, your relationships. Food can be the lover that you don't have. Food can be the safe, stable relationship with a parent that you never got. Food can be the sense of connection to a community that you don't feel a part of. Basically, humans, we have to feel safe in order to think that we are going to survive, right? And now the hunter-gatherers had to feel safe by being connected to people around them, because if they weren't, they get picked up by tribes and predators. Obviously, we don't have that going on right now, but we have the same brain as we did thousands of years ago. We have the same brain, same body, just a different environment. So our version of not feeling safe is feeling connected in our intimate relationships. Feeling understood, seen, validated in our personal relationships. And so many people I work with have unfortunately got conflicts going on in their life. Maybe they've got a marriage that's lacking in intimacy. Maybe they've got conflicts going on with their parents. Maybe they've got, family problems going on. Maybe they're isolated. They're feeling lonely right now. And the more they open up about the relationships, the more I see, the more dysfunction they have in their relationships, the more dysfunction they have with eating habits. So many people are using food as a coping mechanism to deal, sometimes unconsciously, with the stresses they've got going on in their relationships. And when I say relationships, I don't just mean romantic ones, I mean all of them. Okay, so food's compensating for a disconnect in relationships. So we've got jobs, we've got relationships. Number 3, it's another simple one, but hobbies. If I'm on a consult with someone and I go, tell me, what do you like to do to have fun? Where do you get your pleasure from? What's the thing that you're most excited to do on a daily or weekly basis? I'm not even kidding, Eleanor. Half the time people go, nothing. I'm like, what do you mean nothing? I don't have
That's
any hobbies.
me. That is totally me.
Right.
We,
So
we,
I'm
we
like,
were in
okay.
Lapland at Christmas, and Santa asked each of us to say what the person next to us enjoyed doing in their free time. And my daughter was next to me, and she was just like, I don't know, she doesn't do and it's because I kind of do volunteering and stuff, and it was like, actually, I don't do anything for me, so I totally get that.
However, you are creative though, so you do your writing and your coaching, so you're probably getting some needs met from that. What I'm talking about is people who have, and I always say this, emotional eaters are creative people who are not being creative enough.
Yeah.
The human brain is designed to look for an outlet, right? It's designed to look for comfort. It's designed to look for something to switch us out of fight or flight into just feeling connected, right? And they've done studies on rats, and even they observe it through children as well. Like human children, of course. Most of their neural connections are formed through play, through creativity,
Yeah.
through play. We learn faster. We wire the neurons in the brain faster and stronger through play circumstances. Many adults, literally, all they do, they wake up, the moment their eyes open, they've got kids to look after, they've got school runs to do, then they go to their 9 to 5, then they come home, then they've got their second job, full-time mum for the evening, then they finish at 9 o'clock, they're so exhausted, they haven't even got time for hobbies. So is it any surprise that when I go, where do you get pleasure from? They go, the takeaway I get on a Friday night, or the chocolate that I have when the kids go to bed, or what are you looking forward to most in the day? My tea. I'm like, is it any surprise that you're struggling with your food when literally food's the most exciting outlet you've got? And that penny drops often. The penny drops for a lot of people who go, oh God, you're right. I've got nothing going on in my life. So a big part of my coaching is to get people to, yes, work on their eating habits, but also say you need to replace where you get your pleasure from. So when you are feeling a little bit disconnected, a little bit overwhelmed, a little bit vulnerable, a little bit stressed, you can go, well, I've got 3 or 4 other things where I can get my sense of play from or pleasure from that isn't just food. And by doing so, we'll put food further on the pecking order, which further down on the pecking order, which means it's less likely to seek it. So many people are seeking food out, not because they've got this disordered eating, but because they've got disordered living. And if we don't have any form of creative outlets, then how can we regulate our emotions? So many people are just using food because it's the only source of pleasure. So that's number 3. Number 4, massive link to past traumas. I've got another book on my desk that I always come out. It's by Nicole LePera. I learned this from her years ago, and I also talk about it in my book, which I reference. 4 times more likely to develop disordered eating if you were the victim of emotional, childhood, or sexual abuse in your early formative years. So many people who struggle with their eating habits massively linked to past traumas. So that could be anything. It could be complex trauma, it could be a specific event that you went through, or it could just be the dynamic you have with your parents. I've got to talk about this in the book, but I had a client who told me a horrible story. 11 years old, her mum had her own issues with her body and whatnot, and she started projecting that on her in her early years, teenage years. She grabbed her one day, stripped her clothes off her, put her in her underpants or whatever, stood her in front of the mirror and went, "No man is ever going to love you if you look like this." This woman was in her 70s when she was telling me the story. She'd been replaying this in her mind for 60 years, and I was like, fucking hell.
That is heartbreaking.
So it could be little things like that. It could be being bullied for your weight at school. It could be a parent who constantly berated you for your size or your eating habits or whatever. Or it could be some more severe traumas, and I let people use their own imagination about what that could be. So a big part of what I do is getting people to go back through that timeline almost and go, right, what things have I went through that have actually impacted my personality, which has then led to me using this as a coping response. And it wasn't until I had some psychotherapy myself, because I was always like, no, I've never been through any traumas, which I haven't in that degree. But my psychotherapist was like, yeah, everyone says that. So he got me to do an example of 7-year cycle. So he's like, from the age of 0 to 7, list everything you think has impacted you. 7 to 14, 14 to 21, blah, 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 blah. And I went on through like an inventory of my entire life. And I was like, oh my God, I can see how all these things are all related to the same thing. Fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, severe comparison to other people, not feeling emotionally safe to express how I feel. So I bottle it all up, throw in a few of these events here and there. Right, no wonder I've struggled with this. Okay. So I do a similar process with my clients, and then they start realizing, oh my God, no wonder I've struggled with my eating habits. It's wrapped up in all these things from my past. So that's number 4. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to interject?
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to kind of touch on there. I know you'd kind of mentioned about ADHD and things as well, and there are kind of those links between ADHD or the similarities between ADHD and trauma behaviors, isn't there? And I guess a lot of what you've talked about there, it's kind of as a result of the trauma, certain behaviors have come out. But I know you mentioned kind of ADHD earlier in terms of the rejection and the overthinking and the all of those things. I guess we've all probably had trauma with a lowercase t at different points throughout our lives that we do dismiss because we don't see it as trauma.
Yeah. So the talk about it now, it's neuroscience and trauma and mental health's come a long way in the last 4 or 5 years. That's why I love this author, Nicole LePera. Honestly, anyone check her out. She's called The Holistic Psychologist. Brilliant author. And she refers to it as big T trauma, which is what we think of trauma like, Vietnam War veteran or someone who's been abused in childhood. And we think of trauma like that. So when someone says, what have you been through? We go, well, nothing. But then little t trauma is basically it's like the death of 1,000 cuts. It's all the little tiny things that seem insignificant. But if you went through childhood where you had a parent who you had to walk around on eggshells, you never knew what version of them were going to get. Or maybe you had a family member who struggled with addiction and you've seen them act in the way they did. Or even now, epigenetics, right, which is when the moment you are conceived, the personality and the memories that are imprinted on your parents will be imprinted on you at the moment of conception. So a lot of the traumas that we have, or personality quirks or traits that we have, they're not even ours. They're generational. So there's all of that as well. So we need to change the word trauma. It's not just this single horrible thing I've been through. It's those as well as the tiny things that you might not even remember. Gabor Mate as well. I don't know if you've heard of him. He talks about how the most formative years, 0 to 7, is where most of your personality is formed.
Yeah.
So think about some of the horrible things you might have went through from the age of 0 to 7. Like watching your parents get divorced would be so heartbreaking. I've heard I think she's called Erica Commissar. She's like a psychotherapist. I've heard her on a podcast talk about how it's actually quite traumatic for like a 3-year-old to witness their mum give birth to another baby and then feel like that disconnection from attachment. And there's got to be certain things that's got to be done because in that moment, the baby doesn't have a sense of self yet. And it takes that as a rejection. You'll never remember being 3 years old, thinking about how hurt you felt that a new baby come along. But that's stored in your subconscious and it plays a role. It's so deep. So your past experiences do shape your eating habits. And anyone who I've spoken who struggles with eating habits but refuses to acknowledge anything that they went through is playing a role in their eating habits, unfortunately they won't change because it always plays a role, even if it's unconsciously. So that's number 4. Number 5 is a disconnection to nature. And I've seen this one during lockdown. I had clients who are absolutely flying with their weight loss, their eating habits, their results. All of a sudden, stay in the house all week, not go out, not see anyone, not do anything, not go anywhere. Physiological impacts as well, not getting vitamin D, breathing in the fresh air. We need all of that. We're animals. We'll forget that. We are animals. We need to abide by the laws of Mother Nature. And so many people are using food because they're just disconnected from the free chemicals that you can get from nature. So if we're void of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, because we're not connected to nature, we get free chemicals from nature, then we'll seek it through quick fixes. So that could also be for drugs and alcohol and other things. But I see a big link between the clients I work with who are very kind of spiritual and they're connected with nature, and they, even if it's just going outside for 10 minutes every day to get a walk, they get better results because they can regulate their emotions better than people who stay cooped up indoors all the time. So that become that much of a theme that I put that as one of the voids. I'm like, if you're disconnected from nature or how a human's supposed to live, and that might mean you're on your phone too much, you're not getting outside enough, your connections are online instead of in person, you don't exercise, anxiety or energy with nowhere to go manifest through sedentary behaviors, things like that. We've got to look at, are you living by the laws of Mother Nature? Okay, so that's number 5. And then number 6 is about status. I mentioned it before about I struggled with my relationship with food because I was comparing myself to other people. So whether that's you're a female comparing yourself to other women, a man comparing yourself to other men, whether it's about jobs, finances, looks, body weight, body shape, societal expectations, a lot of the people I work with, when they drop their guard a little bit and they open up, I'll realize that they are constantly ruminating around, this is where other people are, this is where I am, I'm not good enough because of X, Y, Z. And sometimes it's not even got anything to do with the body, it's other things, which then leads to feelings of low self-esteem, which then leads to comfort eating. So status and comparison, that's void number 6, because it'd be void of self-worth if you're playing that game unconsciously. Then number 7, it's basically, if you feel that you are on a path to nowhere in life, then you can't regulate your emotions. Viktor Frankl, author of Man's Search for Meaning, has a quote that's basically like, if you know the why, you can deal with any how, right? Meaning that if you have that level of certainty in your mind about, this is who I am, this is what I'm working towards, this is what matters in my life, a sense of purpose. If you don't have any hope for the future, you can't cope. And if I ask someone on a consult saying, like, tell me, what are you working towards in the next 3 to 5 years? What's the most exciting thing that gets you out of bed every morning? What's your purpose? Fortunately, Eleanor, so many people can't answer that question. They just go, I don't know. And they've just got lost in life, lost in the bills, the errands, the car payments, the mortgages. We've all been there. Very easy to fall on that trap. And so many people are disconnected from themselves.
Yeah, it's being stuck on that hamster wheel of life, isn't it? That you just you're going round and round and you don't actually stop and reflect of like, why am I doing what I do and where am I going and what is my kind of reason for doing this. I think it's very, very easy to for anyone to fall into, especially when you do link it back to kind of all the other 6 areas, really, especially the job one. I think when you just kind of doing that daily grind, if there is a disconnect, I think quite often you can keep yourself busy so that you don't actually have to look at what that is and address it, because that's where it becomes a little bit scary.
Yeah. And this is where 95% of people would be immediately triggered by what I've just said, and they'll go, no, I'm not listening to that guy, I'm going to go back to Slimming World. But the people who are aligned with me, the people who decide to invest in me as a coach or who are involved in my world, they hear that and they feel that and go, oh my God, you're right. Like, I know I haven't got the answer for how to solve these problems right now, but you've just shone a light on maybe things that were unconscious or I wasn't aware of, that the eating habits are a symptom of those things. So I use the iceberg method, the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, right? It wasn't the bit sticking out the water that they thought they got away from. It was what was underneath. So they saw the iceberg, shit, starboard, whatever they said. Have we got away from it? Yes, it looked like it, but the back end of the ship smashed a bit under the water.
Yeah.
That's people's lives. I'm like, the reason you struggle with your eating, it's not just, food at the top, I'm eating too much chocolate. I'm like, that's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, just countering that kind of food exercise, but actually there is all of this other stuff going on underneath that needs addressing.
Well, of course, I help people with that food and exercise. They're not going to get results unless we do that. But I say it's 50-50. 50% of the work that I'll do with you will be training you how to, of course, eat better, how to deal with your emotional eating triggers, how to improve your relationship with food, whatever physical habits that you need to do to get the results that you want. But the other 50%, it's on those voids we've just talked about, what we're going to do about it. Because you can't undo the symptom unless you solve the root cause. And the root cause for why many people are using food, because it's a behavior, It's a behavior putting too much food in your mouth, right? Take away all of the fancy descriptions of what we've just said. Someone who struggles with their eating habits or their weight, they're just eating too much food. So how can we get you to eat less? Okay, but we need to see, right, what's causing you to go past the amount of food that you need to eat to just maintain your bodily functions, and what's putting you in that excess. It's all emotional. It's all comfort-based. It's all self-soothing. Using food as a self-soothing behavior. I mentioned it before. Babies do it. Baby cries, mum feeds it. That's ingrained in our brain that food is a source of comfort. Think about it logically, right? If we were on a desert island, we wouldn't give a shit about how many likes we got on my Instagram photo. We'd just care about when's my next meal, otherwise I'm not going to survive. So in itself, eating is the most primal thing we can do to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've mentioned the book a couple of times. I can't remember whether you've mentioned the title of it or not. So let us know the title and whereabouts can people find it.
So it's called Why You Overeat and How to Stop for Good. So it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's like Ron Seal, right? It's on Amazon, and you can also buy it on my website, which is samgibsonlimitless.com, I believe, or .co.uk. I should know my own website, shouldn't I?
I
It's
think
one
it
of
might
those.
be .co.uk, but we'll definitely share the link in the show notes anyway, so that people can find you if they want to find out more about how they can work with you and get a copy of your book. I think it's probably really clear how you stay, or well, it is to me anyway. But how do you stay motivated? If you do come up against people who push back against what you're doing, how do you stay motivated day to day with it?
Sometimes I don't. I think motivation's a bit of a fallacy straight away. I don't need motivation, I need leverage. And my highest values is the truth. It's being aligned to the truth. Okay. So that means if I feel something to be real, then it doesn't matter how I personally feel about it, I've got to put it out there. A lot of the things I talk about in the book, they're not my truth. They're things that I've found to be real through personal experience, trial and error, and what I've observed in reality. So many things in that book would have triggered the shit out of me 10 years ago, Eleanor, because it would have been holding up a mirror to things that I didn't want to
Yeah.
deal with in myself. So I've kind of, again, I've mentioned about being spiritual before. The spiritual path, not that I'm connected to any sort of mainstream religion. I'm not. But I believe that there's a higher power guiding us, and that higher power is truth. Truth is just love. It's the same thing. It's what's right. It's what's truthful. It's what's honest. It's what's real. You know. So I've just got to follow that path, no matter how I feel about it. And do I fall out of alignment sometimes? Yeah, and that might be I don't tell a client how I really think about what it is they're struggling with, because I might trigger them, or I might, not open up to my partner when I need to, because I feel like she might judge me. So every day I'm falling out of alignment, and I've got to go, oh, you've got to live with the truth. You've got to live with the truth. But I find that when I am truthful and when I put the things out there that are truthful, it might trigger 99% of the world, but one person will hear it and they'll go, I needed to hear that, Sam. So I don't do it for me. I don't need motivation. I do it for the person who messaged me and goes, Sam, you've changed my life. Because, not to blow my own trumpet, like that happens all of the time. And that's what
Yeah.
keeps me going. Because if I was to make it about me, I would have went back to personal training, because that's way easier. It's a way easier sell. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to be a marriage counsellor. I don't have to be a trauma therapist. I don't have to be a diet coach. I don't have to be a bloody whatever, organising, planning expert for my clients. I don't have to do any of that. I've chose the most difficult niche ever because I think I'm putting out something truthful. So I don't even need motivation. I do it because I think that's what I have to do. I'm
Because
pulled
it's
by
what's right.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to talk about today that we haven't had chance to touch on?
Yeah. So we did off air, so to speak. We talked about the elephant in the room in
Oh,
2026,
I
which is
know. I did say I was going to raise it, didn't I? Manjaro. So yeah, obviously that has kind of exploded things, but obviously it's still not getting into the reasons why and behind why people do kind of develop these habits with food. So what's your thoughts and feelings about Manjaro and other weight loss drugs?
yeah. So I'm going to approach it from, and this is what I like to do, I like to critically think, right? I don't think anything's all good or all bad. There's nothing in this world that's all positive or all negatives. There's drawbacks to everything. Famous quote by Thomas Sowell, there is no solutions in this world, only trade-offs, right? So there's just trade-offs here. So we just have to look at the trade-offs, okay? So what you said there about, it's not really dealing with the root cause. I mean, talking about just fixing the symptoms and ignoring the root cause, that's Manjaro, like that's what it is, right? It's just, let's forget about all the stuff I've talked about, the voids, the relationship with food, how it's been formed as a self-soothing behavior over time, the link between relationship with food and mental health and past traumas. Let's just forget about all of that. We'll just turn food noise off artificially with chemicals. That's true. However, if someone was to say to me, Sam, I'm a binge eater. I'm massively overweight. I've been told by the doctors if I don't lose weight that I'll leave my kids behind and I'll be dead in the next 6 months. Like, some people are unfortunately in that position. Like, we've seen the TV shows, we've seen how bad some people, I'm talking about people who are morbidly
Yeah.
obese.
Yeah.
If it was a choice between chop my stomach in half and get gastric surgery, which I'm fully against, because I've worked with so many clients who've had so many long-term health complications as a result of that. That's a huge trauma to the body.
Yeah.
This drug is a miracle compared to that. So if someone was to say, Sam, you've got to pick one medical treatment, either gastric surgery, so people will stop people eating by chopping their stomach up, like, how archaic is that? It's, when you take a step back and overlabel it as a medical treatment, how insane is that for a second? We're going to chop 90% of your stomach off so you can't even eat. It blows my mind that that's a thing. However, that's been a thing for years. So this alternative, I think it's a lifesaver for some people. However, they are not talking about it honestly. I think in order for it to be effective, they need to say this is very much a procedure that's dealing, or a medical treatment that's dealing with the symptom. I think it
I
should go
guess it's a
along with
sticking
behavior
plaster,
therapy.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather
If
than,
doctors would be honest about it and say, you're going to go on this drug, it's going to turn food noise off. That's going to get you healthy. It's going to help you lose weight. It's going to stop the binge eating almost immediately, which it does, and it works. I'm not going to
yeah.
sit here and say it doesn't work. It does. It's very clever. It mimics the same hormone that you'd have when you're bursting full, and your body's like, yeah, stop eating. It's giving you that, so there's no food noise. It turns it off. It's very intelligent. It's going to save a lot of people's lives. But I think in order for them to be fully honest, and this is where I go back to being aligned with the truth, I cannot lie to people. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I can't sleep at night. They are being dishonest about how it's being used, and of course it's about money, right? They've basically created the perfect business model where people are going to be faced with a very difficult choice. They're either going to have to stay on it forever, which is going to, God knows what that's going to do to their health, because there is no long-term studies. It doesn't exist. When I say long-term studies, I'm talking about someone who stays on it for 50 years. That's a long-term study, not a couple of months. We don't know what impacts of staying on that for life. But the reality is, you're either going to have to stay on it for life to keep the results, otherwise the food noise will come back because no behavior change is being done, or you're going to have to come off because you can't afford to stay on it, and you will relapse because the food noise is going to come back with a vengeance. So that is the unfortunate crossroads so many people who are taking that drugs are involved in. It's either stay on it for life and keep the results, come off it, gain it all back. And we're already seeing that in the news now. There is a third way, but this third way is expensive, and it's not convenient for the people who sell these drugs. It's, you stay on it for a short period of time, 6 to 12 months, you get the weight loss results that you want to put you in a healthy BMI, and then we taper off the dose while you get behavior therapy to fix your relationship with food. But they'll not do that because that's expensive, and the consumer, people who just want quick fixes, don't want that anyway. So that's my
I
truthful,
guess
honest
almost
opinion.
as well with that option, there's a finite, it's like they're fixed. There's not that recurring payment model. Then is there like that? Like it's kind of
Not in their
almost
best
done with.
interest.
Yeah.
They've created, right, and this, some people might look at this and say, oh, you're being very conspiratorial here. Am I really? It's obvious to look at. This is a revolving door system. They want people to stay on this for life because they've got a customer for life.
Yeah.
It goes against their interests as the medical industry to fix this for good. They don't want that. They want repeat customers. This is a business, and unfortunately, the people who are putting out these drugs, like the doctors, they have their patients' best interests at heart, but the pharmaceutical drugs have their shareholders' best interests at heart. This is the world we live in. Like, it's not conspiratorial to go follow the money. It's obvious.
Yeah.
I actually
Oh
done a
yeah.
keynote.
Yeah.
I've done a keynote on this last year. The weight loss industry is predicted to reach 800 billion. That's a B, not million, almost a trillion in the next 10 years. It's currently at about half a trillion a year. In 2026, it's projected to be nearly a trillion in 10 years. So they've got their shareholders who are like, yeah, we're investing because we want to hit that benchmark. They need people to either stay on it for life or experience it, relapse, come off, go back on. It's not
Yeah.
conspiratorial. That's just obvious. You've got to have your head in the clouds to not see that that's the
Yeah.
model being pushed.
Yeah,
And
no,
who's the
you
victim?
absolutely have to address that kind of the underlying
Yeah.
aspects of it if you want to avoid kind of that cycle. No, that has been really interesting, Sam, and thank you. It's been like I've really enjoyed the conversation we've had today, and I feel like we've kind of solved everybody's problems within one podcast. Obviously, people know where to get you at samgibsonlimitless.co.uk, I think it is, but yeah, we will double check that one before we put it out. As I do with all my guests, can you finish off by telling us a fun fact or something interesting about yourself that other people might be surprised at?
I guess I can do too. So, fun fact, you probably tell I'm a bit high energy, probably undiagnosed ADHD, right? I've never pursued it. I don't frankly care. But I know for a fact if there was like a list of symptoms, I've got 10 more than that's on the list, right? 100%, I know for a fact I am, but I just don't really care. However, there's so many quirks that I've got, right? Where I love working in coffee shops, right? So even though I pay for this office, rent this office every month, I only use this office for calls. I kind of do work in here, I get so distracted. So I go to Starbucks across the road to do admin work, but then I can't do any sort of client work in Starbucks. I go to the library to do that. Then I've got another coffee shop where I do another work. So basically, I've got this weird thing in my mind where I've got these specific different coffee shops that I travel around multiple times a day to do different tasks. And it's almost like my brain can't function unless I've got the certainty of the coffee shop
I
and the
don't
task.
think that's weird at all. So actually,
You
one
know,
of the things that I talk about when I talk about identity is about environment, and it is about the fact that if you're trying to kind of create that creativity side of you, like let your creativity out, it's really hard to do that if you're in your admin environment. So I'm a
yes,
huge advocate, and I think that is absolutely spot on that you have the different spaces for doing the different things. So I love that. I've not come across anyone that does it like that, but I think it's brilliant. I love it.
it's a bit mad sometimes because I'd be like, right, I've got my admin stuff 10 to 11, then I need to do some client work. So I'll leave, drive to the other coffee shop, then order another coffee. I can't just sit there and do it. It's like I've got this mental block around
Yeah.
doing different work tasks in different coffee shops. And that's very strange. And also, I spend a fortune on coffees. And I guess my other thing, just a hobby of mine. If if they say like, oh, if you had one thing that you could like just do forever every day if you didn't have to pay your bills. Fishing. I absolutely love fishing. It was my childhood thing that I got away from when I discovered drinking women at the age of 16. And then I discovered it again at the age of 30, and I do it once a week, every week, and it's my time in nature. It's when I do all of my deep thinking. I wrote so many chapters of the book in my head while I was sitting on the side of a pond or a river, just having these creative ideas. It's where I go to get my sacred restoration. So that is how I basically sacred restoration I call it. So fishing is my hobby, and if there was one thing I could say, Sam, you can do this for the rest of your life every day, what would it be? I'm like, fishing. I love it. I'm obsessed with it.
My teenage son, he's just got into it a couple of years ago, and well, he then put it down, and just this last week, he's asked about getting back into it again. So that's really interesting. I feel like this is a universe thing going, like fishing,
Well,
get
you
him,
you live
get him
local.
going in fishing.
You live
Um,
local to me, don't you?
yeah, we're in Brighton, Blaydon area in Gateshead.
Right, Wrighton and District Angling Club. I'm not a member myself, but there's a couple of great ponds there. Loads of people, loads of great people there. There's the Angel of the North Fisheries as well. If he wants to get into it, that's a day ticket venue. That's really good. Obviously the River Tyne's right there as well. So loads of places around there for him.
Well, we live. I mean, literally outside of my window here is the River Tyne. So yeah, I'll definitely have to have a look in those. Who knew that the podcast was going to go in that direction?
But I told you the best podcasts are the ones that are unscripted, they're random. We're just having a chin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. As I said, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I have no doubt that we will be speaking again at some point about where your journey has gone on from here anyway. But yes, thank you so much for today. It's been a pleasure.
No, I appreciate that. And I just want to give you that thank you as well. I love your LinkedIn posts. And a few years ago when I followed you on social media and I see you're writing your own books, little bit of you inspired me to write my books. I was like, there's people around me who I know or who are just doing the same thing as me. They've got a book. Why can't I? Why can't I? So I remember saying like we spoke at the same event, and you were talking about your book, and I never had a book, and I was like, that maybe planted a seed, even if it was unconscious. And there was other people as well, but just want to thank you as well. You played a small role in me writing my book as well.
Oh, well, bless you. That does warm my heart, and actually, it does kind of just, I guess, kind of reaffirm why it is that I do what I do, because as I say, the podcast is Change Makers, and I do it because I believe that I'm here to change the world, and I always say whether that's just changing one person's world, but also it's that butterfly kind of knock-on effect that it has. And if that kind of did plant that seed and that's helped you with your journey, and then obviously all of the people that has a knock-on effect for, then I have done what I am here to do. So that helps that. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Change Makers with Eleanor. I hope you're leaving as inspired as I am. If today's story has sparked something in you, remember it's never too late to start making a difference. Whether it's writing that book you've always dreamed of, stepping up in your community, or starting that campaign you're passionate about. If you enjoyed our time together, please consider giving us a rating and review on your favourite podcast platform and share this episode with someone who could use a little inspiration. Your support helps us to reach more change makers just like you. Join me, Eleanor, in the next episode for another deep dive into the stories of those who dare to dream big. Until then, be your greatest. See you next time.